Welcome to Heart and Hand Extra. My name's David Edgar. I'm the host of Heart and Hand, and I'm here to preview the game against Dundee at Dens Park on Friday night. Joining me to help me pick through that is a long-term podder, former trust colleague of mine, Mr. Stephen Smith. Hello, Stephen.
Hi David, how are you?
Grand. Ready to rock, and we were just Stephen and I were just discussing classic 80s rock bands, including Big Country, who long-term favourite of mine, as listeners will know. And it's heading into one of those kind of remote cities tomorrow evening that Big Country sang about, where there are crofts and fields and all the rest of it. Actually, these days, I think Dundee, it's more just heroin and lots of single parent mothers, but not for us to comment on Broken Britain at this point anyway. What we need to do is talk a little bit about the game. So Stephen, first things first, the mood in the camp this week will have been pretty low after what was a really, really bad performance against Hamilton at the weekend.
Aye. I mean, I think what we were looking for was to break this 3-game monkey and to get the monkey off our backs rather than break it. And actually, it's it's an incredible result. Bearing in mind, in my view, what I thought were two fairly good. I thought it was excellent at Murrayfield, and I thought it was a reasonably good performance against Thistle. Scored 6 goals, only let one in, and that one was an absolutely outstanding free kick to Kyle Lafferty. So, I think it kind of took us a lot of a surprise. It certainly surprised me that not only that we lost, but we lost by 2-0, and we were back to, the repetition of some of the mistakes that have kind of characterised the worst aspects of the Warburton Rangers team and the Cassini Rangers team, and that they haven't been ironed out. It's just utterly bizarre that we would lose to a team like Hamilton.
This 3-game thing is becoming almost Sisyphean, because here we go again at another start of an attempt to roll the hill up the rock, and every time we seem to be getting close to our destination, something happens and it rolls back down again. And there is almost that feel going into this game of, right, we need to just get the sleeves rolled up and get dug in. And strangely, in most Rangers teams in my lifetime, the home form has generally been better than the away form. Maybe there are stats, I'm going on anecdotal and gut feeling here, but certainly over the years, when you're expecting Rangers to maybe drop points and not do so well in terms of the performance in the league, it has generally been away games. But strangely, I don't fear trips anywhere near as much as I'm beginning to panic about home matches, because our record on the road is really good. At home, though, it's deplorable.
Aye, it's inexplicable, and I noticed that Graham Murty was saying that we need to move heaven and earth to get back to a situation where Ibrox is seen as a fortress, and he's right in this. I mean, it's a statement of the obvious, but he is nevertheless right, David. That it's a great crowd. We've been fantastically well supported certainly over the last 6 years at Ibrox, when the team basically hasn't merited that kind of support in terms of what they've delivered on the field. So the support have done their bit, and it's time for the team to step up and recognise that, because you hear from most players it's great to come and play in front of 50,000 fans every second week, etc, etc. Well, they need to actually show. There has to be that kind of reciprocal arrangement where the fans will get excited and involved if the team are showing effort and a little bit of application and a little bit of creativity. It's not just going to happen. We're not just going to unilaterally stand there and cheer when the team don't merit it. That's just not the real world. So Rangers need to up their game considerably, and we do need to get back to a situation where Ibrox is a place that teams don't like to come, and they worry about coming in, because what they're doing is they're coming in and thinking, if we can keep this lot quiet for the first half hour, 35 minutes or so, and then nurse the game till half time, their crowd will get on their back and all the rest of it. So it isn't a place I think that mid-level teams fear coming to, and we have to get that back again.
It's an anti-Boz uncle situation, but if we had 7 points more from those home games, and we absolutely should, when you look at the run of fixtures, the sense of panic round us would be considerably less, because those are the points that are hurting us. Our away form, although there's been the odd disappointing result, I think Partick away, the 2 each game was one, but overall the teams managed to pick up results and face adversity. I'm thinking of certain matches like Ross County where the teams would come back at them into a game, and obviously Murrayfield where we fell behind.
Yep.
And the team have showed a resolve that it doesn't seem to be matched at Ibrox. So we're going up to Dens Park. Never an easy place for us. And it was. We'll all remember last season, of course, it was the scene of the memorable, for the wrong reasons, Graham Murty headstand. And one of the worst performances I've seen from a Rangers side. And there's been a few contenders over the last few years, obviously. But physically bullied by a very poor Dundee side that day. Never looked like getting anything from the match. Certainly couldn't claim to at any point have deserved to take anything from the match. We were soundly beaten by a team who looked bigger, fitter, stronger, hungrier, more aggressive. It was a really kind of disarming day to be a Rangers fan. And we're going up there though with Dundee. And, well, it's difficult to say because they ended a 5-game losing streak in the league with a 0-0 draw at home to Kilmarnock at the weekend. And on the one hand, you would say, well, maybe they would try and argue, well, that's us ended this terrible run and we're on the up. So maybe the mood in their camp will be a bit lighter. They got a clean sheet, of course, and that's always good for a team that's been losing. But they are bottom of the league. They have taken 1 point out of the previous 18. The other side of that is it's almost a free hit for them. I genuinely can't think of many teams they would rather play in this situation because at the moment for them when they play, especially at home, their fans are on them due to their very poor performances. That's unlikely to be the case tomorrow night unless we come out and hit 3 goals there, very quickly and put the game to bed. Their fans are going to be getting behind them, and it's almost like one of the few times for a team in that position where they'll be playing a side who have more pressure on them than this team who are on this terrible run of form will have normally.
Well, I think that's the case with a lot. I think the only thing better for teams looking to play Rangers this season is that would have been for them to be playing us last season when we were there to be beaten in exactly these circumstances. And you're right, it takes that there's no expectation amongst the fans of teams like Hamilton and Kilmarnock, Dundee, and even Motherwell. I would argue that they're going to batter Rangers regardless of where they are on the table, and any victory against us is to be savoured in the sweet. And if not, then they'll walk away and go, well, it was Rangers, so what, we didn't beat them. But of course their boys will support them then. And I'll just try to think back. I think we played them in the second week in September at Ibrox, and it was a really good, interesting game. And I think Dundee had a couple of really good chances before we got on the score sheet.
No, we took the lead. You're close. It's close as we won 4-1. We took the lead in the first half. Started second half, however, Dundee came out, dominated for 15 minutes, made 2 clear-cut chances. One in particular
that's what's sticking in my memory.
It's a miss of the season candidate from their striker with a header that it was easier to score. We then have gone up the park, scored a very good goal from Josh Windass, and went on to win 4-1 very easily. But there was that 15-minute period where it could have gone either way, and they could argue that because apparently you can argue a 7-1 game could have gone either way from what I read in the newspapers these days. So I mean, it doesn't really matter what the score is, as long as you get in the score sheet at some point. You can, even if you become the first team in the world to score a consolation goal in the opening minute, you can do that. So so we needed to be.
I don't know what you're talking about there, David.
No, it's just random thoughts, Stephen. I apologise to the listeners for blethering, but I mean, we're going into this match, as I say, they're not confident, we're not confident. You would argue that in real terms they obviously have more to lose because they desperately need points to ensure their survival, but the reality of the situation, the real politic of the situation is that Rangers will be the team that everyone is looking at. Dundee will not have that level of expectation upon them that they normally would. Going into a couple of interesting bits of team news, Rangers carrying a couple of doubts. Bruno Alves, and I want to talk about him a little bit more before we move on to the other injury news. The point about Bruno Alves is there were reports in The Sun who corrected it later that day that he had refused to be on the bench against Hamilton at the weekend, which they later corrected and said wasn't true. And Graham Murty, in his press conference before this match against Dundee, said that it absolutely wasn't true, that one paper has apologised and the club are pursuing the other newspaper to apologise. What's your thought on that situation? And if he's fit, will he or should he be going back into the side?
So two separate issues. First of all, I think anybody that believes a single word that the Sun prints needs to have the bumps in their head felt and submit themselves to a psychological examination, because it's a cancerous rag. But I think it's really interesting there. And the other newspaper you're talking about, let me take a guess at the Daily Record being the other culprit. And my understanding, having checked with a pal quite recently, just this afternoon, is they still haven't apologised for what is a factual error, and a deliberate one, because it's an attempt to unsettle the player. Basically, how dare I'm not playing because and actually, were it the case that Danny Wilson was getting selected ahead of them, then I could understand it. But if he's got a legitimate injury, and he does. And I know a number of people were having that conversation with him. I understand at Rangers charity ball this last weekend where he confirmed the back injury. So you do wonder if the record is reduced to trolling Rangers and the Rangers support now to kind of shore up its failing commercial position. And again, any Rangers fan that buys either the Sun or the Daily Record really ought to be having a word with himself in the mirror. Is it legit? Well, we'll never know. A back injury is one of those things that you can't quantify. It's very, very difficult to prove. But I suspect it's legitimate, and I apply Occam's razor, David. The simplest explanation is the most plausible one, and usually the one to be relied on. And he will have a back injury. So if and when he gets back, that's great. But I'd like to see him and McCrory being our starting back too.
The thing that impressed me about McCrory last week was after it really was a terrible error. I mean, you shouldn't be attempting back passes from the opposition half, in my opinion, ever, any time, no matter who you are or who you play for. It's not something to do. There's, especially not when it's 0-0 and you're Rangers and you're trying to push for a goal. So just a bad decision. But he didn't let it affect him. He could have. He didn't go to pieces. It is impressive. So for you, if Alves is fit, it's Wilson who drops out.
Aye, absolutely.
I think,
and actually, reluctantly, David, not on the basis of his actual form, because I think, to be fair to Danny Wilson, which not a lot of people are, he has played well since he's come in for Murty, but there's not a lot of people can say, having played on Saturday, that that the team played well. It was a pretty poor, as you say, performance. But on form and on quality, you'd be expecting Alves to come in. It might be a bit harsh on Wilson, and I'm wondering whether we want to think playing a three at the back here and pushing our two nominal fullbacks a wee bit further forward, but that's another conversation.
Well, the other thing that the other main injury doubt is Lee Hodgson, who had played, I thought, exceptionally poorly at left back last week. He looked terrified, and for me, Hodgson is being picked on his experience ahead of young Bierman, who I think is in that role has more ability, who of course hasn't been seen after that mauling we took from Celtic at Ibrox at the end of last season. And that's a concern with a youngster like McCrory, that when they can make a big mistake, as he did in that match with the early penalty, that it can affect him. So we don't know if it's maybe a case of mentally that Graham Murray doesn't feel he's ready, but I think all things being equal, if Hodgson doesn't make it, you would expect Bierman to step in, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing given the form that Hodgson's been in, and the fact that he simply isn't a left back. He looks like a right back playing at left back, and that's okay when you're confident and the team's playing well. You can kind of get away with that. But when a guy's got no confidence and he's being shipped onto his wrong side, I think that you see what happened last week with Hodgson. So if he doesn't make it, it might turn out to be a blessing in disguise, although obviously we always hope every Rangers player is fit. Speaking of which, he also spoke about Graham Dorrans, Lee Wallace and Graham Dorrans, Lee Wallace and Jordan Rossiter. Still nothing concrete on Wallace or Rossiter, although we've been told to expect Dorrans. He's progressing as per normal. It must be frustrating for a manager to have an option like Jordan Rossiter, but not ever be able to kind of even pencil him into your thinking, and it must make it difficult to plan round how you reintroduce him. That the fact that there's very rarely a time where you can say, with the likes of Doran's injury, he's got this injury, he will be out for X amount of weeks, and the medical team say, yep, he's progressing, he'll be back then. You can start to plan for how you're going to reintroduce him. You don't really have that option with Rossiter.
No, I think we're as well planning to have Eden Hazard in our midfield, David, because he's as likely to show up there as Jordan Rossiter is, who appears to be made of balsa wood and glass in terms of his kind of appearance record. And I think that's been a huge disappointment to a number of people. I remember a colleague of mine who's a Liverpool fan said, that's a wonderful signing, he'll do a great job for you, etc., etc. And, you know, what's he played for us this year? Has he played 90 minutes for us this year? I'm not even sure he has.
Maybe
but
in the
you know, it's he's as close to being a hypothetical player as is possible out with the confines of playing the game on a PS4. So we have to think about what we have. And Dorrans again, I'm pleased that there is at least a legitimate reason for him not being there, and then we can hope for effectively another opportunity to see the player that we thought we had bought in the close season, because he hasn't, to be fair to everybody, has not demonstrated that ability that I and you know he has at the centre Rangers midfield. He should be running games up here. He should be absolutely dominating games. He's got the class, the ability, but hasn't shown it and needs to.
I think we've seen signs of it. I mean, I think there were certain matches, St Johnstone away in particular, I thought he was getting to that level. Where I think it's been noticeable, there are certain things that you don't know till they're not there. And in Doran's cases, I think that he does have a bit of leadership about him that we saw in the second half that the team was almost entirely devoid of. Now, speaking of which, that performance last week prompted some questions about Kenny Miller, that I think a lot of fans felt that he'd returned to the sort of running about, chasing the ball, as opposed to playing up front and making runs and working the channels and doing damage. We are a little short on options. The options are Nico Kranjčar, who has been returning from fitness. I don't think at any point this season has looked anywhere close to full fitness. Came on against Thistle and was really, really poor. But there is obviously talent there. Might be better harnessed half an hour from the bench, I don't know, but I thought maybe it was telling that even chasing a goal last week, Murty chose not to bring him on. You could argue then why is he on the bench, but I think that it's not as if that he's keeping off a number of players from there. So the options for change are a little limited, and I noticed Graham Murty spoke about Alfredo Morelos, who I thought played very well last week apart from scoring a goal, and I think some people had maybe misinterpreted what we'd said on the pod, where we said he's shit out of form. He's shit out of form in front of goal. His work rate is great, his movement is still excellent. You know, he is a good striker even when he's not scoring goals. But last week it wasn't a case of we didn't make him a chance, or the keepers had a great save. It was one of those days when it's a striker who is going through that black period in front of goal, and he desperately needs one. I have nothing but confidence that when he gets one, he'll go on another run. I think that it's just him getting that first goal. And Graham Murty said that they've been working away with him this week. He's kept his head up, he trains well, and I think that that's positive that they've been letting him know that he still does make a contribution to the team, but that a goal will come from him because he's too good a striker to for this to go on forever.
Yeah, so I think you make a key point there, which is that he contributes out with just scoring goals. So unlike, let's say, Chris Boyd, who only ever contributed in terms of his goal scoring, and you might argue that's a hugely important thing to do, but Boyd would never give you anything in terms of a team performance, effort, holding the ball up, bringing other players in the way Morelos does, regardless of whether he scores or not. And I agree with you. He like McCrory, David, is young and ought to be mentally resilient enough to just shrug it off and say, well, another one will come, the same way Ali McCoy used to do. You knew that when McCoy missed a chance, he was not kicking himself for hours and hours after that. He'd gone, well, another one will come and I'll bang the next one. And inevitably, he kind of did. So that's the attitude to be supported there. But in order to do that, you're right in the sense that he needs a bona fide strike partner. And Miller, if he's playing, has to play with him and as a partnership and as a pairing. One makes a run, one holds a position, and they try and play each other in. It ain't going to work otherwise. And Kenny Miller is not, with the greatest respect to him, even though he's extremely fit for his age, is not the kind of player that should be running across, trying to play every position in the last third. He should be remain between the goalposts, or at least the area, and make the kind of runs that he's in the team to do, and that will help Morelos, because the alternative, as you say, is that we play Herrera, the non-target target man. And I'm not really sure that Herrera and Morelos up there would be, against any team really, would be wonderful, because they won't win enough ball in the air. And we do insist, particularly with Alves back in the team if he is, on punting the ball forward that way. So he has to play a legitimate kind of orthodox striker's position, and he can lead the line and let Morelos play that number 10 role. I don't care how they do it, David.
I thought they did that against Hearts. I thought Morelos played deeper.
A bona fide front two in that situation. The point about Crancher, absolutely. I think the only saving grace in his regard, and it's an important one, is that he's the player that we have in that squad that can play that last killer pass in the last third. There's that little bit of composure. He doesn't have the work rate and the effort anymore, and doesn't have the legs to cover the ground. And unless you've got Dorrans and Jack in that midfield, I think it's you're taking a big risk playing Crancher there. But if you play him, and as you say, you bring him on as an impact sub or for the last half hour or so, searching and trying to chase a goal or trying to unlock a defence, he's as likely as anybody else to do that. I'd argue more likely to be the player that does that, as well as being having an awesome free kick in him as well.
Now, nothing happening on the endless managerial search, or what's beginning to feel like the endless managerial search. The only real development this week was Aberdeen's chairman Stuart Milne issued a statement where he said McInnes has told him that he's not going anywhere. He's very happy at Aberdeen. He wants to win things, which some have taken to mean that there's absolutely no chance McInnes is coming. Others have taken to mean as maybe posturing, perhaps, given that it would take a bit of negotiation. There's obviously a release fee because McInnes is under contract. What's your take on it?
Well, I'm a bit of an outlier in the sense that I'm more relaxed about us not having a manager than probably about 90% of the Rangers fans, who are getting more and more apoplectic as the weeks go on, and we haven't made a substantive appointment.
Well, Stephen, that's interesting, because on the pod the other night, I would say that the three of us were of that mind. We're in more in the why is there nothing happening here? Why is this taking so long? And beginning to start to worry. So, I mean, why are you thinking that way?
I think it's my default position, David, in the sense that I think it's absolutely crucial. It's a crucial appointment. Now, you'd argue that any time you appoint a Rangers manager, it's a crucial appointment, and there is a weight to that argument. But at the stage we are, in the financial position we are, and where we are in the season, I think it's far more important we get it right than we make a hurried appointment. And obviously we are fishing in a very shallow pool at the moment, because the vast majority of good coaches are already in employment, and there's an issue. It will take time to lever anybody who we target out of their job. So I think there's and the other thing is that it can't be conducted in public by the very nature of it. We can't have we've approached X, who's already working somewhere, because quite rightly, not only would that be illegal, I think Rangers would attract a great deal of criticism for doing that. So while Murty is a good appointment, and up until last Saturday, there was evidence that he was doing a little more than steadying the ship, a 3-0 and a 3-1 victory. I think that put us in a reasonably good position to make the right appointment. But I do understand people's frustrations in the sense that we need to get a substantive body in there and see what we can salvage from the rest of the season, and how that puts us in position for the next year. Some of the names, I have to say, David, that have been mentioned, and I understand that Alec McLeish's name has come back to the fore this week. If we wait, I'll have to say this as well, if we end up waiting 3-4 weeks and then make an appointment at Alec McLeish, then I think a substantial chunk of Rangers fans will go absolutely postal about something like that.
The AGM is next week, and there are various schools of thought. I mean, I didn't believe that the board could go into the AGM without having a manager on display at it, and apparently it looks as though, and things could change, it's a day-to-day situation, we know things could change, but it's likely that won't happen. Now, if you want to look at that, it's because they're conducting the search. However, I have heard other people say it's because they don't want to have a new guy next to them who's unimpressive at the AGM, and they'd rather just say, you're taking their time. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, it's Schrodinger's appointment. Until it's made, it can either be a great appointment or a poor, you can choose to say it's going to be a great appointment. And some people are worried that this delay is almost to allow for the fact that you mentioned there a McLeish type figure, that after the AGM the board don't necessarily then have that direct Now, the other argument about that, I was going to say that that's a direct chance for the fans to feed back to them, is of course on a match day that can happen. But I just think that the longer it goes, we're coming up for 28 days, for 4 weeks, and I think that now the fans are entitled to be expecting something to happen imminently. Because I think if we're getting to 6-7 weeks during a season when your manager, his jacket was on a sugarly nail before the season started because of the European results in the end of last season, to need 6-7 weeks, unless it's because you've been waiting for someone who's really top drawer. And I do wonder if there are so many ways to look at it. On the one hand, the board could have a definite plan and be working towards it. On the other, they could know how big an appointment this is and be slightly paralysed by indecision themselves. And I suppose, we sit here and speculate, but until the guy is in the chair, then it is very much you can decide how you're going to fit all the limited information and limitless possibilities together and come up with your theory. And maybe it is a case that we certainly all have something to say the day after the guy's been put in the chair for the first day, I think.
Aye. I mean, the problem is that we live in an age of spin where, the political dishonesty that we have to deal on a daily basis is kind of, that poisons a lot of the public dialogue and all sorts of things, including football. So, when people say we haven't made an appointment yet or we're waiting or whatever, there's always an attempt to interpret the subtext and what people said. And I agree with you. I think Rangers fans at this stage, David, nearly a month into the process, have a reasonable expectation that senior level person, whether it be the chairman or whoever, and the board comes out and says, we're going to make a managerial announcement within the next 10 days or what have you. And obviously they have to have contingency plans, but if they're going for candidate A and they don't know whether they've secured him yet, then they have to have a backup plan, because it can't be sustainable, I guess. Well, even if the backup plan is to continue with Graham Murty until, let's say, the turn of the year or given the rest of the season or whatever, they have to be open and public with it. And actually the imminent AGM is quite significant, because that's a hard stop. And I don't think, in terms of the relationship between the Rangers support and the board, that can be put in jeopardy or potentially jeopardised by any suggestion that the Rangers board doesn't have a club's interest and is looking to do this on the cheap and bring in an appointment that's not going to be satisfactory and take us back a couple of years to a situation, where the club is grubbing around at a level that's not appropriate for Rangers Football Club. That's just not a sustainable position.
I find interesting parallels between our appointment and Hart's appointment, especially when there's talk, and you've mentioned, and he's made it clear this time, which he didn't before, that Graham Murty is interested in the position. And Hearts took their time and conducted interviews, as we know, famously, because after conducting interviews, they then decided the man for the job was the guy who had conducted the interviews in Craig Levine. And because after an initial bright start, similar to what Murty got, sometimes, as we've said before, not being the previous manager is enough to, if it's been an unpopular manager, not being him, that frees up the players and they play for a couple of weeks before they sort of revert down to their level, and that's when the manager's ability to improve players and motivate them, etc., comes into play. And Hearts, after an initially decent start, have had a kind of fairly sticky wicket the last few weeks. You can tell I've been up all night watching the Ashes. Good start for England, incidentally. But so you can, their fans are, I think that their kind of amount of pissed off has been amplified by the fact that Hearts took their time and then ended up just appointing the guy who was, in the back room anyway. And the fact that it's now not going well, if you like, it's almost like you revisit that. And while at the time you might be able to get away with it, as Hearts were, and Rangers might with Murty, and certainly probably would have been in a stronger position had he, won the game on Saturday. I think that if it is a case of going this long and then ending up giving it to the guy who was there, I think that as soon as it goes badly, you've set a trap for yourself there that will always be something that fans can revisit, and fans have got long memories.
Well, David, the only way you can explain that is that we had a hiatus period where we approached various people. None of them wanted the job, so we've gone to the guy who's already on the payroll. And people, including Graham Murty, I have to say, will see that for what it is, which is a second, third or fourth choice. Insert your own number. But the Rangers have gone to X number of kind of more senior, more favourably rated coaches, couldn't get them. And therefore, we're going back to the guy who's in charge of the under 21s and the development guy. Now, I think that is interesting that he's expressed a view for the job, but they're clearly, in terms of the calibre of person that's needed to rebuild the football club and take it forward, I don't think Graham Murty ticks those boxes.
No.
And you can have arguments, and obviously it's down to subjective opinion about whether you think Derek McInnes is, but you can make a case for Derek McInnes, and I'm not a fan, but if he comes, he comes, in a way that I don't think you can for Graham Murty. I also have to say some of the names, particularly some of the Dutch names, Van Bronckhorst and Koeman, what have you. I think if people are seriously floating in, then they really need to stop sniffing glue to get back into the real world. Rangers aren't operating in that kind of market.
Yeah.
And it also has to be said, in terms of a cold wake-up call, that if West Bromwich Albion are interested in Derek McInnes being their manager, they will throw far more money at him.
Oh, God, yeah.
Off the pitch than we could in living memory, David, the situation that we're in just now. West Brom can outspend us by a factor of about 20 in terms of the income they have. And there would be no competition if it's a financial decision. We lose out every time. And we'll also lose out to half of the clubs that are in the English Championship, who are all in a better financial position than Rangers are, even in a good year. So, that's the paradigm we're operating in, and it's extremely, we have to be realistic about who we get. It's about matching that ambition with realism, because we're not going to get Mourinho or Pep arriving any time. But there are a strata of coaches that we should be pitching at who tick the boxes and are proven winners. And they might not be glamorous appointments, but, they will take the club forward.
Absolutely. Okay then, Stephen. Well, all that's left to do then is to ask you, what do you see happening tomorrow night?
I'd like to think that we'll get a result. If Dundee play as openly as they did when they came in September, I think it'll be a good game, and I think the players will be looking to make amends for what I thought was a pretty shabby performance on Saturday. So my expectation is that we'll win, I'll say 2-1.
I'm going to echo that. If I was going to put a line on tomorrow night, I would, which I will, I'll be going for Rangers 2-1 as well. I think that somehow that this team away from home, they take spirit from we know already the wonderful away support that they will have on the Friday night here up at Dens. So I agree. I think that they will relax a bit more than they would do if the game was at Ibrox, and so long as they don't allow themselves to be bullied, and so long as they're prepared to match Dundee physically, because Dundee will know that in the back of their mind that last season when they did this, although Rangers have got several new players, they'll still feel that's a strategy that they can work. And if I can get one thing from my birthday, Santa's close enough to Christmas, but if I can get one thing for my birthday on top of the wonderful gifts I receive from people, can it be Alfredo Morelos to get the winning goal? Because I think that would light the blue touch paper again as far as he's concerned. So yep, Stephen and I in agreement. You may disagree, and obviously we want to hear from you after the match. So if you want to get in touch with us, I'm at Ibrox Rocks on Twitter, or you can go to Heart and Hand, the Facebook page, and just search for Heart and Hand on Facebook and up will pop, and chat away to us. We try to get back to as many people as we can. All that remains for me to do then is to thank our executive producers in London, Mr Mike Lee and Mr Paul Miles, to thank my guest today, Mr Stephen Smith.
God bless you, David, and everybody else that listens to it.
And thank you all for listening. My name's David Edgar, and I'll speak to you again on Monday. Cheers, bye.